then there's a little cover over it,
Yeah.
so that he can get out. But sometimes it still gets in it.
Yeah, you'll be all right.
Y'all ready?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
I actually did a little study, so.
Well, that's good. I've
Do you
read
have
through
your
it.
phone recording?
Yeah.
Oh, we probably done filled it up.
No,
You ain't got no room left.
No, because I learned after I post it, I delete it off my phone.
Well, you need to cut out that first part.
Oh,
You can make a second podcast talking about guns and hoarders.
Yeah.
So welcome back, guys, into One the Area, I guess. We are continuing our study of Genesis. I really don't know how long 2 days will take. If it's short, great. If it takes the full time, awesome. So we are covering chapter 5 today, which is really, I read through it twice. I didn't really put the same amount of time into it as I have the past few chapters, just because it is a genealogy. That is literally all it talks about. And so while looking through it, the biggest thing that came into my mind was the years. How long these people lived, how old they were when they had and their kids, all this. And we'll start right off the bat. Adam was 130 years old when he had Seth. He's already, Cain and Abel have already come and gone and done their thing. I couldn't imagine having a newborn at 130 years old, if I'm being honest.
The wife goes, honey, we need another child. I'm 135 years old.
I would imagine if you could live that long,
because he was 930 years old when he died.
Yeah.
So that is the biggest thing that really takes some of me back. And I've heard different theories, and the most common theory I hear is the atmosphere was different, the whole geography and things were different, and in a pre-flood world that there was higher oxygen concentrations in the air we breathe, different things like that, and God just made the body different to where now the average age span, I think, for a male is like 87 years old.
Well, let me ask you, just curious, just to clarify a point there. When Adam and Eve are in the garden, everything's hunky-dory, they're walking with God.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they were immortal at that point? Didn't have a death day on the horizon?
I'm going to say yes, because death entered the world when they ate of the fruit.
That's what I think too. I think that they were, for lack of a better term, they weren't going to die at that point, because God said, if you eat of the apple, you will surely die.
Yeah, it's going to get
They didn't drop
crowded.
dead after they bit it, and so I think that they were designed to be with Him forever. It was perfection in the garden at that point.
Which leads to a point. You're saying, okay, I did some research on this, and I looked at it, and I found out a couple of things that I hadn't connected the dots on.
Mm-hmm.
We make a big deal in Sunday school class about connecting dots. I missed that one. Adam lived long enough, according to this thing here, that he was around part of the time that Abraham was around.
Yes.
And of course, then there's Methuselah, Abraham saw all these people, but when he sinned, yes, that sin nature entered into him, and he was going then at that point to have a physical death. But God still had made him in perfection, and their children, and they had DNA, they had all the stuff that we've got.
Mm-hmm.
They just had it better. And in studying of creation, I agreed with a lot of the creationists that, and it made sense that the vapor canopy and all those things, and then it disappeared in the flood, and when the heavens opened up and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think it did lend help in that regard.
Right.
But I have changed my thinking into, let's look at the DNA and how God made us, and that sin nature, although it corrupted the nature, absolutely, did it corrupt the body completely at that point in time too. And I think that's one of the reasons why they lived longer. And God wanted them to, because you had to populate the world and you had to do those things too. But I just think they were built better, and it took a while for all that to go out, and for sin to have that tremendous physical damage, mental damage, as well as the spiritual damage that it had. And people didn't live as long. And finally, God said, "Okay, you're going to live 120 years." So,
because there's some point their days on earth will be 120 years. So, I mean, basically, at God's will, things change. Just like it did when He told Adam, no longer will the ground give up its fruits easily. You're going to work for them now. This is going to be your punishment. And so, like that, He can change whatever He wants whenever He wants. And I think you're right. I think when He saw you go, I know we're just in 5, but looking at the whole picture, He saw where things were going and said, no, I'm not going to allow this, and changed it to, instead of 900 years, you get 120. So you better live it right. Nowadays, we're looking at what, 70, 80 is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean.
But I agree with you.
So I'm in the pretty good right now.
Well, I think that you're right. I think that between, just a change in, could have been atmospheric conditions, could have been anything, and then nowadays I think most of it is us doing it to ourselves, of
and
what we eat.
But I also want to think about, and I read some other things and just tickled my brain and made some dots connect also. But not only did Adam's sin corrupt us spiritually, it corrupted the world and the physical world and all those things, and our physical bodies over time and distance, I think, became more and more corrupted. But Adam got to see the physical effects of the fall. He lived so long that he saw the world go from the perfection around he and Eve to the corruption, because he died only the generation before the flood. He lived during that time of Noah. And he saw all that pain and misery that he had caused. It went from the perfect world to the world where God said, "I'm no more. We're gonna start clean." And this guy plus his family, those are the only ones. They're going in the ark, and they're going to. They'll be the only ones. So I don't want to say God's punishing him for that. That may have been some judgment for it, but Adam saw all the effects of sin, not just on just some of the people. He saw it on everybody before he died.
I mean, you imagine everything was great. You made one choice And for 930 years, you get to watch everything fall apart.
And people looked at you and go, why? You know, but they knew the story. But he could have passed these stories down to Noah. He could have passed them down to other people in that line of Seth, because they would know he's somebody's great-grandfather. He's somebody's great-great-great-grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the stories were there. And after reading this article by John MacArthur, who is the Grace to You, he's head of the Grace to You. He's been the pastor of his church out there in Los Angeles since 1969. He's 85 years old, or maybe a little bit older. He's still preaching. He's slowed down, but he's still preaching. But I read his take on it's called The Generations of Adam, Genesis 5, and John MacArthur. And if you're out there, Google it or whatever you use, and read what he says about a chapter of just genealogy.
Mm-hmm.
And he begat this person, and he lived this many, and then he died. He lived this many, then he died. It's about death, but it's also got salvation in there. He's got Enoch in there. He's got Noah in there, the promise of life.
Mm-hmm.
And so it actually is a microcosm of salvation. So, I look at it very differently now. It's because I did some other study, and I connected some dots. I didn't feel good about myself being able to speak too much to a genealogy, and I did a little homework, and I'm looking at this now from a very different perspective because of the dots.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's I like it because throughout the genealogy, which I'm about to write it down in order, just so I can see it in black and white, but you can see God's work through one line and through one bloodline that begins with Adam and I'm going to say ends just for this section, ends with Noah. So you get to see the fall through Adam. Then it's looking at this deal I have. It's, let's see, flood. You're talking, say, 1,700 years, give or take.
1650 to 17
goes by,
somewhere.
And you get to a man that is going to be the sole person, his offspring, to repopulate the earth from a new beginning. It just and seeing that, and the way God has a plan to get to that point. Then you go from Noah to Abraham, to David, to Christ himself. And we talked about him in this, and when Christ came, it all had to be perfectly lined up with defeat after incarceration, with defeat and defeat, to get to where Rome built this amazing empire, so that when Christ died, these men could spread out everywhere because the roads were there, the systems were there, the guards were there. It was
Protection.
perfectly timed. And so,
So you're saying there was a plan.
there was always a plan.
You're saying there is a plan. All right, well, and I agree with that. There
I
had to be a
am
plan.
curious to hear some of this. And
Well,
if you
I
have
can-
any highlights
I can
that
make-
you came.
Well,
came
I
from.
did, but it's when you print it out. This is his sermon. Actually, doesn't have the date of the sermon on it, but he gets up and says, "This is our study tonight. Genesis chapter 5 is our study tonight." Those are the opening words of this thing, and then he cranks it off. No bathroom breaks, nothing. He goes for 12 pages, and it's an amazing
wow.
read. And
Okay, so I'm gonna have to look.
but there's stuff that I'm going, I didn't think of it that way. I'm looking at it here. I'm seeing this information, but now I'm connecting more dots, and I began to see. And then he's talking about the plan of salvation in here, and he links these people, and he talks about, and Enoch walked with God.
Yes, that is something.
Adam got to see those things, but he also got to see the results of the choices that he and Eve made. But God's plan of salvation is there, and I want to encourage viewers that God's plan of salvation was there before the foundations of the world. He knew it. He put it into motion, and he used even the sin of man and all the things that we've done all these years as a race of people, that God has used all this in his sovereignty and by his strength and all the attributes that we talked about in class, to bring about Christ, and that perfect timing with all the Babylon and all the Assyria and the Persians and the Greeks and everybody rising and falling, and the perfect timing, the perfect place. God brought his part of his plan to fruition, and it'll come to fruition again, maybe in our lifetime. That's kind of how it looks, but God's word is an amazing thing. And just like we talked about this morning, this is where God puts his power, in his word, and that's why it's so important that we study the word and understand what he says. So I just connected some great dots taking a look for this.
So I got a question for y'all that I noticed at 5 o'clock this morning when I was skimming through this again, because my past few days I've been up in between 4 and 4:30, which sucks, but it is what it is. But this morning I noticed when you're reading through the genealogy, you get to chapter 5, verse 25. It says when Methuselah had lived 185 years, he fathered Lamech. Methuselah lived after he fathered Lamech 782 years and had other sons and daughters. Methuselah was 969 years old. First off, he's the oldest one by 7 years, but he's still the oldest one. But he fathers Lamech. When you go back to chapter 4, you see, starting in verse 18, Enoch was the father. No, to Enoch was born Irid and Irid. I don't even know how you say that.
In 18,
Yes.
Mehujael.
Yes, Mehujael. We'll go with that.
We'll go with that. East Texas.
He fathered
Accent.
Methuselah, and Methuselah fathered Lamech. So we meet Lamech in chapter 4.
Okay. Yeah.
Lamech has 2 wives. He's the first and one in my study. 2 women take 2 wives. Which of the wives of Lamech was Noah's? Number 1. I can't get my stuff to work, so I can't Google it. But why do you think Noah wasn't mentioned when they name 2 women kids from one wife and 2 kids from another wife?
Well, I do have an answer for that,
Okay.
which is I don't know.
Well,
But unfortunately, I hate to disappoint you. But
I kind of got excited.
I know you did.
for a
You lit
minute.
up. You lit up
I
for a second.
did.
But I had to crush your dreams. I'm sorry. We're friends, but that's what we do. That I don't know. Now, I would like to go back and trace that down and see what other people have gained from it, like just John MacArthur's insights. I've read this. I'm 70 years old. I've read this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't connect it.
Right.
And I didn't see it in the overpowering and overshadowing plan of salvation. And I should have done that, but I didn't until just recently. So
Because
I don't
when
know
you're
the answer
looking
to
at this, and when you're looking at 4 verse 18, when it starts with Enoch and ends with Lamech, there are 2 generations there that aren't talked about in chapter 5. You get Irad, and then however you said that, I've done forgot. And
Mehujael.
Yeah, Mehujael. So in chapter 5, you don't get those 2. It goes straight from Methuselah to Lamech. So that makes me wonder how many generations are actually left out of this genealogy, because right here it leaves out 2 in between Enoch and Methuselah.
Well, that's just how we're able to read it. And by we, I mean you and me, looking at it. And I'm sure other people have too, but I would like I said, to take a look at the collective wisdom of men of God and see what they have to say on that. And to that point, I'll just have to say, I don't know. But
it was just an interesting thing I realized this morning.
It needs to be chased down.
And I didn't have the bandwidth this morning to do it, but it was something that I noticed. I was hoping Scott would be here today, but he already had plans. I talked him and back and forth with him through text, because as Scott has said in the past few episodes, that he has a problem with the age of these men. We haven't really got to hear why, which is why I was really hoping, but he'd be here. But I forgot he would be out of town. But he did say that we could talk about it. I think it comes up again in chapter 11. He said so. I'll be looking forward to that, but it's really a genealogy to me is really hard to cover. For one, it's information that we need for a reason to see how we got from A to B. But it's really hard to, at least and for me, to pull a lot out of it. I mean, like I said, it was this morning when I realized that chapter 4 ends with Lamech. It has nothing to say about Noah, but it also leaves out 2 generations in between Enoch and Methuselah.
I just noticed something. You freaking had me going back to 18. Okay, wait.
On chapter 4?
Are there 2 Enochs in the Bible? Am I reading it right?
There's an Enosh that is Seth's son, is Enosh.
No. In 17, Cain was intimate with his wife, and she conceived and gave birth to Enoch. On 17.
To Enoch was born.
And you say in verse 17 in chapter 4?
4.
Yeah.
Okay, this one I'm looking.
So
MacArthur speaks to that. He says there's an Enoch in chapter 4, verse 17. That's a different Enoch.
Okay.
In the line of Cain.
Okay. Well, that's what I just saw that, and I was like, wait a minute. I don't remember Enoch being the son of Cain.
Two separate.
Because I was like, that
people.
would be pretty impressive that Enoch, the son of Cain, walked with God for 300 years. It's like,
Yeah.
Wait a minute. You got a mark that God personally gave you, and then your firstborn is renowned as walking with God. Okay, so it's 2 different
It's 2
Enochs.
different Enochs.
Okay, all right. Moving on. Okay. I was like, wait, what the heck is going on here? It's saying 2 different people here.
Okay.
Well, that's why we've got to look at guys that have been looking at this stuff for 80 years versus our less time. But because it's important to look through these lines and to see where they lead, because when
you have a map of that in the room.
It's in the room next to us. If we want to go steal it, we can. He'd never know we did it.
It's a little big to move in here.
It's a little big to move in here, but it followed the lines. And what I liked about it was that when they were born, there was a line that went to when he died, and you could cross-section that and look at it and say, this guy was alive when this guy was alive. And you began to understand more often that sometimes these people actually crossed paths.
Yes. I think it was Enoch. And so I saw one, though some in time lapses, and it showed that Enoch was there like the last 50 years of Adam's life or something like that. And so Enoch could have learned directly from Adam.
Yes, he could have told that story. We were in the garden. It looked like this. Didn't have to mow the yard. Nothing.
You've been mowing the yard.
Oh my gosh. Hang on. I found another one. So, hang on. It says, so back to 17 and 4, it says that then Cain became the builder of the city, and he named the city after Enoch, his son. Irad was born to Enoch. Irad fathered Mahuel, fathered Methuselah, Michelle, and he fathered, and and then he fathered Lamech.
But it's a different guy.
I know, and then you get over to 5, and then it starts again. Enoch and Lamech are in here.
So there's also, and I'm looking again, this is MacArthur's work, which I would trust a whole lot more than my interpretation, that there is also a Lamech in chapter 4, verse 18, but that's a different Lamech. Same name, but different person in a different line. And that's
so that might be...
It's a different line.
Yeah, and there's some of these names that are too close to each other. This one, Methushale.
But these are probably, I've looked at that, but they're different spellings of basically the same name. And just like Tim talked about in church this morning, the names of God, and that people were given names that had meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And so that slight change in that particular language gave that person a different meaning to the name. And so you've got, here's the guy, Methushael.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got the EL on the end of the name, just like the name of God. Then Mehujael, or Hiel, if the J is pronounced as an H. But they're just different lines coming out of different wives.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one reason why, as we're studying our hermeneutics, and that's, I hope y'all see what a mind-boggling thing that is, because it's blowing my mind.
Okay, yeah, so...
You go back and you apply those rules to it, begin to start application work, and you see that it is different, and you see that...
So, yeah...
that it is different.
It is a different line. Because, so scratch that. Lamech in 4:18 is not the same Lamech in 5:25. So scratch everything I said about that, because I just looked at the name, and the name is different.
Mm-hmm.
I do, however, find it interesting now that Cain and Seth, because because after Adam, those are the two bloodlines we get. It's Cain's bloodline and Seth's bloodline. I find it interesting that the names are either the same or very close. But like Tim said this morning, and we've been discussing, names had meaning. It wasn't just a group of letters that was thrown together to get Shane or Jeremy or Eddie or Scott. It was a symbol that carried its own meaning that went with the next one, to yes, create a name, but it was for a purpose. Like I'm watching The Chosen, and I'm on season 4, and I just watched the one where Jesus renamed Simon to Peter. And there was so much more meaning there that even at that moment now, Dallas Jenkins states very well throughout the whole thing that this is a portrayal that he sees. He sticks to scripture, but there is filler in there because we don't get the whole story.
Right.
But in that scene and the rest of that episode into the next episode, you really get to see Peter start to evaluate himself because of the change of the name. I forget what Simon meant, but when he changed his name to Peter, it's the rock, it's the stone, it's
The expectation.
The expectation when Jesus tells not just Peter, but the whole group, this is the rock I'm going to build my church on.
Talk
You
about
get
pressure.
to see his personal struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, I have something I have to live up to now because he changed who I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
just by the change of a name. So it does make me wonder. In like Methuselah in chapter 5 is the father of Lamech. And in chapter 4, verse 28, it's Methuselah.
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 Just a
It's not-
derivative name probably had some meaning. Again, I'm not a Hebrew scholar,
No.
but just from the spelling, is it just a derivative of it that just meant something a little different? Maybe the first part of the name and the first part of this name that was Methuselah versus Methuselah, and this just had a different meaning on the end of it.
Right,
like
because
Edward, Edwin, and Eddie, and Edmund. I just going off of my name.
Yeah.
And so my given name, my middle name I go by is Edwin. You don't see a whole lot of those anymore. But I'm an Edwin, and the derivative of that was the diminutive, whatever you want to call it, is Eddie, and that's what I go by. And my first given name is Glenn. That's my dad's name. I was named after him. There are no other Glenns in our family line. We've traced it back to American Revolution. There's not a Glenn in there anywhere, and there's no Edwin. So where'd that come from? We don't know, but that's the name I've got.
Well, speaking of names, and because really the genealogy is a list of names that progress with meaning. I mean, we look at my oldest son, Wyatt. His middle name is is Virgil. That is a family name on my dad's side, going back, I think, like 5 or 6 generations.
To the Earps.
I don't think it goes back that far.
Or the owner of the OK
I
Corral.
guarantee you, that's what I would say.
Somebody
If my
out there
name was
going.
Virgil, it'd be, that's after my great uncle.
My last name is Spencer, not Earp, so it doesn't work.
There was a female came into the mix somewhere, and then it branched down from there.
But we named him Wyatt because it is really hard to
Is it Wyatt Virgil?
It's Wyatt Virgil because it was very hard to come up with a name to go with Virgil.
Okay.
With being the middle name.
You know how Tim asked, how you come up with your name? Do you know how Julie and I came up with Chloe's name? We practiced being angry and yelling at her. It had to roll. Chloe Elizabeth!
Did she know that?
Yes, that's how we did it. I was
like,
because I forget what we, I can't think of some of the names that we were going to go with. And I'm like, no, see, that bumbles. You bumble on that. If you're mad, you're going to fumble that, and then it's just going to be hilarious, and all the momentum's gone.
Oh, you're not mad anymore.
Exactly. So you got to be able to roll it off your tongue.
And I hate to say this, 70 years old, I've never looked up what my name means. I never have. It means, according to this, it means wealthy guardian.
Hey, Uncle Eddie, put me in the wheel.
I know, right?
And it's ranked number 941 male name by popularity. I don't know. I hardly know anybody else named Eddie because after Leave It to Beaver and Eddie Haskell, I think that name Eddie just fell off the plate. Nobody wanted to name their kid after that.
Well, Eddie Murphy probably ruined it because nobody
he-
wanted to think
hell,
you named your kid after Eddie Murphy.
I know when Ed, but
Yeah, and see, when people call me Ed, I don't even answer to the name.
I don't know what it's short
it's not
for.
my
I
name.
haven't even asked. I'm
It's
going
Edward.
to now.
Yeah, or Edward or Edwin. Is
Yeah.
what
I'm gonna
it
have
is.
to ask.
Well, my
ask him
dad,
that.
Wealthy gardener.
my first
But,
name is
Mr.
Robert.
Ed was a horse too,
That's
so I mean,
I've been related to that or one end of him, one of the two.
Well, that was his social name. His real name was Mr. Edwin, the talking horse. No, my first name and my dad's first name was Robert. And so you take it, there's Robert, Robbie, Bob, Bobby, all from Robert.
I still don't understand how you get Bob from Robert or Dick from Richard.
That's what I was going to say. I don't know who. That's the one. Where'd y'all come up with that?
I have no
The
idea.
short name for Richard was.
I think it's
Dick.
probably somewhere back in England and somewhere off in there, but it was just wrong. So
Yeah.
we don't.
I mean, I just, but names do carry weight, especially back then in the Hebrew society. I'm going to call it because that's the first word that came to my head. But everything, each German name and they gave was with purpose, was for reason, as Tim said, in this and this morning, Elohim is the first name given for God. It's used 35 times in the first 2 chapters of Genesis and over 2,500 times in the Old Testament. That's powerful. That is the first name given for God. And it's also a plural. But getting into the Trinity is a whole nother topic that I'm not qualified to discuss. So,
All right. I got two things before we run out of clock time. I got 2 things that, as I've been sitting here, I've read this probably 3 or 4 times now, chapter 5, just rereading it. There's 2 things I noticed. Okay, first is all these dudes, listen for a second. Adam was 130 years old when he fathered a son in his likeness. We'll come back to that. Seth was 105 years old when he fathered Enosh. Enosh was 90 years old when he fathered Kenan. Kenan was 70 years old when he fathered, and I'm not even going to touch that one, and that dude was 65 years old. Then you got Jared was 162 years old when he had his first child. Enoch was 65. Methuselah was 187 years old when he fathered Lamech. What were these dudes doing for 100+ years
Lamech was
before
182 before he fathered Noah.
Exactly.
Well, and we know these people had other children.
Yes.
And they could have been females. And also, even though they had a male child, that male child may have died. I mean, there's all kinds of things that could happen that we don't know. But this is recorded, I think, and I have done a little bit of thinking about it. That was the person that was chosen. And the only reason I say that was the person that was chosen to continue the line.
Okay.
Whether it was by default or whatever happened else out there in the world. But does that go back though and connect with God choosing us?
Right.
And there's nothing biblical to back that up. I mean, I make the connection of the word chosen.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it explains the length of time between children.
I get that. That just kind of caught my eye. That's not nearly as interesting as this, because I know I've read Genesis at least 3 times in my life. You know, like I said, I know I just sat here and read it a few times. This kind of stuck out to me. This one's a good one. Adam was 130 years old when he fathered a son in his likeness according to his image and named him Seth.
Okay, think back before that. Now, MacArthur speaks to that a little bit.
Okay.
God created a man
In his
image,
right.
who was Adam.
Right.
He sinned. And all that time later, Adam, then he fathered a son in Adam's likeness, a sinful man. That doesn't mean he went out and was.
So wait, let's back
correct.
up. We kind of skipped over Cain and Abel.
Were they not in his likeness?
I mean, is this the same Adam, right?
I mean, no, it's the same one, and that's very specific.
I want to make sure I didn't jump into another trap and find another Adam in here.
No,
but it just the wording of it was very
specific.
stark. You know that. Okay, what about Cain and Abel? Were they not in? I don't know. That's confusing to me.
Well, just a rock skipping across the top of the water. Cain was out of the picture.
Right.
He was gone.
Yeah.
I mean, from almost the start.
And so was
Abel. Abel was out of the picture.
And Abel was out of the picture too. So someone who survived in that line was made in the image of his father.
Right.
And I don't think it doesn't mean those other two were not. It's just in the line of succession to Jesus, those other two are not in the picture.
Well, I just wondered if they meant that, you know how it is, like some fathers have children, they could be standing right beside them and you never know, oh, this is my son. Oh, hey, nice to meet you. You know, others you just walk up and go, yeah, that's your daddy right there.
So I have an uncle, my Uncle Billy, that if you stood me between my dad and Uncle Billy, who's my mother's youngest brother and the second to youngest, there were 8 kids in the family. You say, who's his dad? You'd point at my Uncle Billy.
Oh, okay.
90% of the time. Because I favor that's my mother's side of the family.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad was tall and a good-looking man, but I look like my uncle. So
I don't know. Like I said, it just kind of, sometimes you read a verse and it just sticks. You're like, wait, what did I just read?
Yeah.
To do it again, and it was just kind of like, well, now wait a minute. What about Cain and Abel? They didn't look like their dad, I guess. But
well, one last thing I want to John, and we'll wrap up with this. So we all know that the book of Enoch that was written sometime around between 400 and 300 BC. It was well after the time of Enoch. But in chapter 5, verse 24, it says, Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him.
mm-hmm.
So Enoch technically never died, because God took him. And I wish I knew off the top of my head where it talks about where Enoch is taken up in the chariot of
Hebrews 11:5.
Hebrews 11:5. Okay. Well, there we go.
Mr. Encyclopedia over here gets a gold star.
It says it right here.
I know. You should have never put that on.
I had to be looking at it when you said it. I go, well, it's right here, man. What's wrong with you?
That was good.
So my question is because next week when we get into the start of the flood and with them and Noah, we see that Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have Noah, great, and so Noah walked with God.
Mm-hmm.
His great-great-great-grandfather also walked with God.
No, just two greats.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
grandfather.
Great-great-great.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah. I messed that up. So
Okay.
two greats in front of that. And so, what to me, and I know there's a reason I just haven't researched it enough yet, but what made these two men stand out from the rest of their genealogy?
You've got your study? Is that your study Bible?
This is my ESV study
Okay.
Bible.
Well, down at the bottom, this is the Spurgeon
Mm-hmm.
CSB. Enoch walked with God. It was not that he merely thought of God, that he speculated about God, that he argued about God, that he read about God, that he talked about God. He walked with God, which is a practical and experimental part of true godliness. In his daily life, he realized that God was with him, and he regarded him as a living God in whom he could confide and by whom he was loved. And notice Enoch was a family man. He fathered other sons, daughters, and it just talks about, sum it up real quick, he talks about the daily distractions of having a family at home and trying to walk with God every minute of the day. You know, do you take time to study your Bible? I can tell you this, I read this and it kind of made me chuckle in my head a little bit, just because I've told Julie I said I was kind of this morning a little bit off, and it's because I haven't been doing my daily routine, which is get up, take my vitamins and stuff, and I take the dogs for a walk, and then when I come back, I usually sit down and I'll read 15, 20 minutes of the Bible, you know, to start my day off. And when I'm at home, that tends to be much harder than it is when I go down and go to work. You know, I'm at my apartment, I get up, there's no distraction, TV's turned off, I sit down uninterrupted and spend my time reading. So, you know, it just talks about, you know, that you take the lifespan of him, right, and all the children they say he probably had,
Right.
and then say, okay, and he walked with God daily. You know, how challenging that can be to balance family and your time with God. So.
And so I like the way that's laid out, because we see that same term with Noah, and a version of that same statement with Abraham, which is where the Abraham has Isaac and Jacob. Then Jacob has the 12 sons, which become the 12 tribes of Israel. So that actually, after you read that, gives a lot of weight to the statement, Enoch walked with God. Noah walked with God.
Chapter 17, Abraham walked with God.
Abraham walked with God.
In fact, God told him to. He goes, I am God Almighty. Walk before me. Be blameless.
I mean,
you just go, what's your response? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
sir.
mean,
when people
that within itself puts a whole new weight to those three words. I mean,
yeah. It's funny because you know when you watch videos online or whatever about these guys, and you know, granted they know way more than I do about the Bible and everything, but they're talking about subjects like, you know, what makes a Christian a Christian? What rules do we need to follow? You know, what do we need to do? And you overcomplicate the mix when Jesus told you, you know, the simple two rules. And, you know, I've always loved that part of the Bible because it really is that easy. Love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And, you know, we've had that taught before on other podcasts of, do we really do that? You know, when we're at something as simple as when you're at the grocery store, you know, and you've got, you know, 5-6 items in your cart. You really don't have, you know, we're not in as big a hurry as we make ourselves in.
right.
You know, and the worry that we have on a daily basis, which I have to keep reading scripture and reminding myself of that, you know, to don't worry about tomorrow because tomorrow will worry about itself, you know. I mean, I've got plenty that I can
Focus on today.
involve myself with in worry, you know, but it is that simple that these men trusted God in every aspect of their lives. You know, and I think that's what it truly means to walk with God, is they didn't worry about where their next meal was coming from. They didn't worry about this or that. I'm sure if they got sick, they weren't worried that they were going to die from it. They just prayed and, you know, trusted that God would take care of them, and, you know.
And some of these guys also saw, talking about living by faith, you know, it took Noah 100 years to build the ark, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some of these guys, I mean, Adam lived within
That time frame of Noah.
Other these guys lived within that time frame. In fact, Enoch lived right before the flood came, and so they could have seen this going up. They may have worked on it. They may have helped on it. They may have seen people, and some of the people who actually helped Noah build the ark, mainly his sons and those, but they had to have other people contribute to it somehow. And then when Noah and his sons walked in, everybody else was locked out. But, you know, we see, do you know what the Noah's name means? I see that, I catch that here on page 11. It means rest or comfort. It comes from a Hebrew word which means to breathe again or to catch your breath. You start breathing again. So God started over. People were breathing again. Anyway, I just, in this summary, he talks about we see these three men mark this genealogy in a special way. Adam, he shows us the reign of sin and death. Enoch, he shows us the hope of conquering death. And Noah tells us of a new day. We catch our breath, I guess. He tells us of a new day and a new creation that will come after the judgment. And that's what is pulled from this genealogy, just the genealogy. They lived, they died. They lived, they died. It's amazing what God's Word shows us when we're able to see it, see the whole picture, connect the dots between the Old Testament and the New Testament, and see God's plan of salvation before we ever existed and the world ever existed. God planned for us and these guys to be with Him forever in eternity. And I'm pretty grateful. Makes me appreciate God's Word and genealogy a little bit more.
Yeah.
I hope. And once I read that, I go, you know, you can see that here. I never would. I don't think I would have ever pulled that from just that and connected where they overlap. We need to be better dot connectors.
The more we learn, the better we become.
That's right.
Well, guys, we actually wrapped up under time.
So are we saying that it's really Scott that?
Boom! There went that greyhound.
I'm moving on.
Moving on.
Next week we get into what I'm going to call the meat and potatoes. We start that with the flood and the building of the ark. I've in my head, when I broke all this up, 6 through 9, I kind of called in my head the restart, because that's basically what God does. He restarts the population. He restarts His creation with 8 people.
Breathe again.
And so that is what we will start with, is chapter 6 next week. I'm going to have to be better prepared than I was today, but it was really hard for me the genealogy part was just really hard for me to focus on. But it does make more sense now that we've picked it apart, looked at spelling specifically, and then of course Tim's lesson this morning really helped make sense of
lines of succession.
Right.
Yeah.
So
who's your daddy?
Yeah. Who's your daddy? So guys, thank y'all for giving me y'all's time again today, and we will see y'all next week.